I felt angry that I didn't push for him to be arrested for that tire slashing, and that I didn't, raise more red flags for Haley with that.
I boosted Michelle up first and then climbed in, and she was a little ways ahead of me, and basically she screamed and yelled to me like, "Josie, call 911.
The Millennial Hippie, a story of trust, obsession, and justice across borders. Asterisk. A two-year-old nursing student walks into her ex-boyfriend's apartment at 4 a.m. Security cameras capture her entering. She will never walk out alive. Within 48 hours, her suspected killer boards a plane to Nicaragua, leaving behind a handwritten confession and a body strangled in his bed. Asterisk. Haley Anderson had everything to look forward to. In March 2018, this bright-eyed nursing student at Binghamton University was just weeks away from graduation. She had already secured a nursing position back home in Westbury, New York. Her mother, Karen Anderson, was planning a massive celebration. Haley had even made a long list of everyone she wanted to invite. She had worked so hard, done so well, and I was going to give her a big party, Karen remembers, her voice catching on the memory of a celebration that would never happen. Haley was the kind of person everyone remembers. With her flowing hair, her vintage style, and her infectious laugh, she embodied the spirit of a free soul. Her friends called her a millennial hippie, someone who trusted everybody and talked to everybody. She dreamed of buying a hippie van after graduation, traveling to California, and working as a freelance nurse on the open road. She trusted everybody, Karen says. She talked to everybody. That trust would cost Haley everything. When trust turns fatal, the morning of Friday, March 9th, 2018, started with growing concern. Haley's roommate, Rachel Arton, had texted her that morning, but received no response. This was unusual, but not alarming at first. I figured she was still asleep, Rachel explains. She loves sleeping. But as the hours passed, the worry intensified. Haley had promised to attend poetry night on Thursday evening to watch Rachel read. She never showed up. All calls went unanswered. For someone who was always connected, always responsive, this silence felt wrong. Then came the breakthrough. One of Haley's roommates tracked her phone using Find My Friends. The location showed her iPhone at an address they recognized immediately. 23 Oak Street, the apartment of Orlando Tercero. Rachel and another roommate named Rebecca rushed to the address. They knocked on every door, no answer. The windows were their only option. We were knocking on all the doors and no one was answering, Rachel recalls. I boosted Rebecca up first and then climbed in. What happened next would haunt Rachel forever. She screamed and yelled to me, "Rachel, call 911. And I walk in there and then I see Orlando's bedroom and Haley is there. Haley Anderson lay motionless on Orlando Tercero's bed. Her skin was pale, unnaturally so. Rachel didn't know for sure that her friend was dead at that moment, but something fundamental had changed in the universe. The vibrant, laughing girl who had stayed up late playing board games and drinking wine with her roommates just days before was gone. She just was so pale, Rachel says, the image forever burned into her memory. Haley had been strangled to death. And Orlando Tercero was nowhere to be found. The nursing student and the charismatic stranger. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, we must go back to when Haley Anderson first arrived at Binghamton University. The Binghamton area of Broome County has 200,000 people, a place that sees its share of major crimes and 5 or 6 homicides a year. But no one expected this particular true crime story to emerge from its college campus. Haley was a straight-A student who had been accepted into the competitive nursing program, which meant an extra year of school. She didn't mind. Nursing was her calling, a chance to help other people. Everyone who knew her recognized this compassionate drive. She always wanted to be a nurse more than anything, says her friend Madison Matuzak. For her, it was a chance to help other people. In her personal life, Haley maintained an on-again, off-again relationship with Brandon Ocampo, also a Binghamton student. They loved each other, but Haley had made her priorities clear. She needed to graduate first. She wanted to experience real freedom before settling down. "Did you think you might end up together?" Brandon is asked. "Definitely," he responds. "Did you love her?" "Yes." But Haley wanted space to explore life, to date others, to find herself as an adult away from family expectations. This was the mindset she had when she met Orlando Tercero. Orlando Tercero was born in Miami and grew up in Nicaragua. He came from a well-to-do family, his father was a physician, and Orlando followed a similar path into the nursing program at Binghamton. He was charismatic, knew just how to push your buttons in the right playful way to get you to laugh and have fun with him. He definitely liked Haley, says Tyler Bua, one of Orlando's roommates and best friends. I'd say they were a good match just because they both were very good at having fun and kind of life of the party. Haley and Orlando first met in class but didn't forge a friendship until Haley's 4th year at school, when they crossed paths at a party at Brandon Ocampo's off-campus apartment. It was just coincidence that they met there. Haley recognized Orlando from their nursing classes and introduced him to Brandon. The three grew closer. Brandon even invited Orlando to join his fraternity. They bonded over their Hispanic backgrounds. For a while, it seemed like a solid friendship was forming. Me and him were the only two people that spoke Spanish, Brandon explains, so I thought it'd be a good idea. And for a while, it was... When friendship crosses lines, the dynamic shifted when Brandon and Haley took one of their breaks. Orlando crossed the line in his friendship with Haley. They had some romantic encounters together, but Haley was very clear from the beginning that she didn't want to be in a committed relationship. Rachel Arden recalls. What developed was another on-again, off-again relationship. Sometimes they were bickering, sometimes they weren't. Other times they would laugh hysterically, and Tyler could hear them from his room when Haley stayed over. Then they would keep their distances and wouldn't see each other for a while. But there was a cost to this casual arrangement. Orlando's fraternity brothers pushed him out for sleeping with Haley because she was considered Brandon's girlfriend. The social consequences were significant. I think Haley felt guilty for that, Rachel says. Did he make her feel guilty? Yes, I found that out. Yes, he made her feel guilty. How? Orlando would say, "Oh, I want to kill myself." This was where the true crime elements of manipulation began to emerge. Orlando started using emotional blackmail, appearing uninvited at Haley's apartment. He used to stop by a lot to come smoke a cigarette on our porch, Rachel remembers. He definitely used to drive by. When asked how Haley would react when he showed up, Rachel's answer reveals the uncomfortable dynamic that was developing. Usually I would deal with it for her, because it's hard for her to be like to her friend, "You need to leave. This is not appropriate." So there were nights where I would have to go out and be like, "Orlando, you need to leave. You can't just show up at our house." The obsessive behavior escalated. Orlando was jealous, unwilling to accept that Haley had control over her own life and choices. "You think Orlando was obsessed with Haley?" Rachel is asked. After a pause, she responds, "Yeah, for sure." Tyler Bua saw it too. He was clearly weirdly possessive of Haley, who wasn't his girlfriend. He definitely liked Haley. He definitely seemed like he wanted it to be a little bit more than just an on and off fling, slashed tires, and ignored warnings. Then came the incident that everyone would later identify as the massive red flag they should have recognized. It happened the day after a party at Orlando's apartment where he learned that Haley and Brandon were on again. Brandon had spent the night at Haley's place. The next morning, as she walked him out, Brandon noticed something wrong with her car. "I noticed that something looked off about it," Brandon recalls, slashed every single one. Haley posted a Snapchat video about the vandalism. Her childhood friend Madison Matuzak was a few hundred miles away when she saw the post and saved it. In the video, Haley's voice carries a mix of confusion and concern as she surveys the damage. "I just was like, what just happened? Why would anyone do that?" Madison remembers thinking. "How crazy do you have to be to slash a woman's tires?" Brandon immediately suspected Orlando. "I told her right away. I said it must be Orlando." Orlando denied it and even tried to blame Brandon, but Karen Anderson didn't buy it. "Oh, absolutely," I said. "Haley, you need to make a police report," Karen remembers. So the police came over, they took the information down, but she wouldn't press charges. This decision would haunt Karen forever. The damage was over $600, which would have made it a felony. Orlando would have been kicked out of the nursing school. But Haley, in her compassionate nature, in her belief that people deserve second chances, refused to press charges. "It was a red flag for you, but not necessarily for Haley?" Karen is asked. "No, right, she trusted him." For a while after the tire slashing incident, Haley kept her distance from Orlando. But despite warnings from her family and friends, she eventually let him back into her life. This was who Haley was. Someone who saw the good in people, who believed in redemption, who thought that trust was a quality worth maintaining. That trust would prove fatal. A timeline of tragedy. The last 48 hours of Haley Anderson's life can be reconstructed through security camera footage, receipts, and witness statements. What emerges is a chilling picture of premeditation, violence, and attempted escape. Thursday, March 8, 2018, early morning hours. Security cameras at 23 Oak Street capture Haley and Orlando walking into the residence together around 4 a.m. This footage would become crucial evidence. After Haley walks into the house, she is never seen again. Orlando, however, is seen leaving the residence several times. Nearly 7 hours after arriving with Haley, Orlando is captured on camera, clearing the driveway of garbage and leaving alone. Using a receipt found in his apartment, police tracked his movements to a local pharmacy where he purchased ZZ Quill and melatonin, 2 sleeping aids. He purchased ZZ Quill and melatonin, 2 sleeping aids, explains Lieutenant Derek Minor, who led the search for Haley's suspected killer. Orlando then returned to his apartment, where security cameras didn't pick him up for another 7 hours. But when they did capture him again, he didn't go very far. He was walking in the direction of the basement. What investigators believe happened next paints a picture of a killer's regret. They believe Orlando tried to hang himself in his apartment using hooks stored in the basement. But in his failed attempt, they believe he fell and hurt himself. "You can see some blood on the floor," says then Broome County District Attorney David Cornwell. "You can see a tie hanging from a doorway." Detectives also found a note written in Spanish. It begins, "Lamento mucho esto. I'm really sorry about this. I never felt I could be capable of doing this." He also wrote, "Papi, te veo pronto. Father, I'll see you soon." His father had passed 5 years earlier. Investigators thought it read like a killer's confession and suicide note. But 16 hours before Haley's body was discovered, Orlando left his apartment one last time with his luggage. He drove over 3 hours to New York's JFK airport. Security footage shows him with his head bandaged, possibly from that alleged suicide attempt. Orlando Tercero boarded a plane and headed home to Nicaragua, using his dual citizenship to escape justice. Or so he thought. A mother's worst nightmare. On the afternoon of March 9th, 2018, Karen Anderson noticed 2 men in a black car parked outside her house in Westbury, New York. It was the moment every parent dreads. They get out of the car and they walk up to the door and they sent me down the table and they said Haley's name, Karen recalls. And then they said suspicious activity. Karen couldn't process what was happening. I just kept staring at him and it wasn't processing. And I said, "What do you mean?" Then they told her daughter Haley had been found strangled to death in Orlando Tercero's bed. "I was just numb," Karen says. The words barely capture the devastation that follows such news. In that moment, Karen's world ended. The graduation party she was planning, the future she envisioned for her daughter, the grandchildren she would never have, all of it vanished. "I felt angry that I didn't push for him to be arrested for that tire slashing," Karen admits. The guilt of a mother who couldn't protect her child weighing heavily. "And that I didn't raise more red flags for Haley with that." Meanwhile, back at Binghamton, Lieutenant Derek Minor and his team were working to piece together what happened. The security camera footage told a damning story. The note in Spanish suggested guilt and suicidal ideation. The evidence of a failed suicide attempt painted a picture of someone who knew what they had done was unforgivable. But the killer had fled the country. When Karen learned he was in Nicaragua before authorities could apprehend him, her first thought was despair. No way he got away with murder, she remembers thinking. It was now up to Nicaraguan authorities to capture a fugitive with dual citizenship. The question on everyone's mind, would Nicaragua extradite him, or would Orlando Tercero escape justice by hiding in his home country? Finding a fugitive. The 48 Hours team, along with risk advisor Jason Copeland and Nicaraguan journalist Diego Flores, traveled to Managua, Nicaragua, to retrace Orlando Tercero's steps. What they discovered was a story of family loyalty, political complexity, and ultimately, justice delayed but not denied. When Orlando's flight landed at Managua's international airport, his mother picked him up. She drove him about 3 hours north to their hometown of Chinandega, a small town where Orlando had grown up, across the street from the church his family once attended. For several days, Orlando allegedly hid out in this house, while David Cornwell, back in Binghamton, wasn't sure Nicaraguan authorities were even looking for him. "We had no communication with anybody in the government of Nicaragua at that point for those few days," Cornwell explains. Then, 4 days after his arrival, Orlando's mother drove him an hour south to the much larger city of Leon to get medical attention. According to the police report, Orlando was brought to a hospital with self-inflicted wounds, implying he had tried to take his own life. It's possible someone at the hospital recognized the fugitive. The story had been in the news for days. Police finally found and arrested Orlando Tercero at that hospital. The next day in Managua, police held a press conference, putting Orlando on display for all to see, his head still bandaged from his injuries. They showed Orlando. "We knew he was there," Cornwell says. My thought was, what do I do now? Where do we go from here?" Orlando was in custody, but he had yet to be charged with a crime by Nicaraguan authorities. An international fight for justice had only just begun. Fighting for justice across borders. Less than a week after Orlando Tercero's arrest, Haley's family and friends gathered in her hometown in New York to lay her to rest. Everything after that was just a blur, Karen says. I don't mean the funeral. I can't even remember who was there. Just 2 months later came another heart-wrenching day, the one on which Haley would have graduated from Binghamton University, fulfilling her dream of becoming a nurse. At the graduation ceremony, there was a picture of Haley on a chair. Her father, Robert Anderson, accepted his daughter's diploma in her honor. I guess the reason why I wanted to do that is because I couldn't see her walk up and get it, Robert explains. That maybe by me going up, I would feel a part of her in me. While Haley's family was struggling to come to terms with their new reality, the fight to extradite Orlando to the U.S. was in high gear. David Cornwell immediately took steps to secure a second-degree murder indictment against him. I told the family I was optimistic, Cornwell says. I wanted him to be here. I wanted to see him. I wanted to be face-to-face with him. But it wouldn't be that simple. Remember, Orlando had dual citizenship in the U.S. and Nicaragua. An existing treaty does not require either country to extradite one of its own. The effort would stretch on for a year and a half. Then, in September 2019, David Cornwell got a call from the Department of Justice. I was told good news, bad news situation, Cornwell recalls. I said, all right, well, what's the bad news? They're not going to extradite him. What's the good news? They're willing to try him in Nicaragua. Cornwell's reaction was blunt. I thought we had a snowball's chance in hell of getting a conviction in Nicaragua. A revolutionary charge. In the U.S., a grand jury had charged Orlando with murder in the second degree. But in Nicaragua, he would be charged with something that doesn't even exist in American law, femicide. Femicide is defined specifically as the murder of a woman with whom the perpetrator had a relationship. It's a charge that recognizes gender-based violence as a distinct category of crime, acknowledging that women are often killed by men who cannot accept their autonomy. The entire trial would be conducted through teleconferencing. Witnesses would testify from the Broome County DA's office to a courtroom in Managua, thousands of miles away, where a judge, not a jury, would decide Orlando's fate. On October 1st, 2019, the trial began. Karen Anderson was the prosecution's first witness. Does your daughter tell you if she ever had any problem in her relationship with Mr. Tercero? The prosecutor asked through a translator. Yes, Karen responded, that he would not stop texting her and following her and driving by her house. As Karen testified, she got her first glimpse of Orlando on the screen. What did you think when you saw him? What did you feel when you saw him? She's asked. I felt sad that he ruined so many people's lives. And then as the trial went on, I kept becoming much more and more angry because he acted very arrogant and almost as if he was there and he was bored. Rachel Arton also testified, describing Orlando's possessive behavior. Tyler Bua took the stand, explaining the on and off nature of Haley and Orlando's relationship. Brandon Ocampo told the judge about the slashed tires. But it was Binghamton police investigator Michael Peters who methodically took the judge through all the evidence, including the damning surveillance footage and that handwritten note. The pathologist, Dr. Daniel Tusian, testified about Haley's autopsy, confirming that the cause of death was asphyxiation by neck compression. She had been strangled. For David Cornwell, the evidence was overwhelming. He choked her to death. He took Haley, who I believe may have been sleeping, and he choked the life out of her and left her there to rot. Cornwell says, his voice filled with emotion. That is a sick, disturbed man that could take advantage of somebody he claimed to love and kill her because he couldn't have her. A desperate argument. Orlando's defense attorney, Carlos Rubio, had a difficult case to argue. He claimed that due to the influence of alcohol, Orlando was temporarily insane at the time of Haley's murder. To prove it, he called a psychiatrist as his first and only witness. Dr. Thomas Lopez Aguilar, who was appointed by the court, testified that Orlando told him he had no recollection of what happened, claiming he woke up after a night of heavy drinking to find Haley dead. But the expert couldn't verify whether any of that was true. He said there's no way to tell what Orlando's state of mind was at the time of the murder. Instead, he could only say there was nothing wrong with the defendant's current mental state. It's indefensible. It was an indefensible case, Cornwell asserts. I would say there is absolutely no possibility that he doesn't remember what happened. There's no evidence that he was drunk or on drugs. There's no evidence that he had some sleepwalking disorder and commits murder in his sleep. After both sides rested, Judge Patricia Betancourt did something that would never happen in the U.S. Before a verdict, she gave Haley's family the last word. Haley was a beautiful, intelligent, and friendly girl, they told the court. She was an aspiring nurse and had her whole life to look forward to. She was and still is my best friend. So thank you for listening and letting me speak on behalf of my daughter. Justice at last. Then it was over. David Cornwell expected at least a day of deliberation. Instead, the judge shocked him by saying she would return with her verdict after a brief recess. It was a surprise. That's not the way our system works here, Cornwell explains. A judge will normally say, "Okay, thank you, I'm going to deliberate on my own and write a decision." After a tense 90 minutes, the judge returned with a bold statement denouncing violence against women and advocating for equal rights. She said Orlando disposed of Haley because he did not accept that she had control over herself. Then came the words Haley's family had been waiting for: guilty of femicide. When the verdict finally came in and he was found guilty, what did you think and how did you feel? Karen is asked. I mean, it's so hard to say. It doesn't bring her back and it doesn't give you that sense of you don't really feel better. But you do feel like you can close the book on that chapter now and start trying to move forward and heal. Karen was once again given the opportunity to address the court, and this time she spoke directly to Orlando. I hope that you get the highest amount of years behind bars because you deserve even more than that. 2 weeks later, Orlando was sentenced. In her decision, Judge Betancourt said Orlando took it upon himself to punish Haley for rejecting him. Then she punished him with the maximum 30 years in prison. I couldn't believe it, Karen says. I was so happy that we could work with this other country and that the prosecuting attorney did such a good job and was so passionate about this conviction. David Cornwell was equally moved. We owe the Nicaraguan authorities, the prosecutor, the court system, we owe them tremendous thanks and have my gratitude for the rest of my life. Fighting to the end. In February 2020, a heavily guarded Orlando was back in a Nicaraguan courtroom, this time to appeal his conviction before a panel of 3 magistrates. His attorney, Carlos Rubio, was still arguing that Orlando was highly intoxicated and temporarily insane at the time of the murder. He wanted a new psychiatric evaluation, this time by a forensic psychiatrist well-versed in temporary insanity defenses. Rachel Artin finds it very difficult to believe that Orlando can't remember killing her friend. A nursing student, if you're strangling someone, he's going to recognize, in whatever state, he's going to recognize this person is dying. I need to stop, Rachel says. How do you put that power in your own hands and look at somebody and watch their breath get taken away from them? So intimate to me and so brutal. I mean, it's one thing to kill somebody with a gun, but to just take their lives with your hands, like that is so raw and sad and just unbelievable. Carlos Rubio also argued that Orlando was wrongly charged with femicide and sentenced to 30 years. In the US, he was charged with second-degree murder and would likely have faced a lighter sentence with the possibility of parole. To everyone's surprise, the magistrates immediately considered and rejected the request for a second psychiatric opinion. But on the question of modifying the sentence, they said they would need time to deliberate. Nearly 3 weeks later, on March 10th, 2020, nearly 2 years to the day that their daughter was murdered, Karen and Robert Anderson were once again at the Broome County DA's office to hear the appellate court's decision. The hearing took over an hour while an officer of the court read the 12-page decision. In the end, it took a nervous Karen Anderson a moment to realize that the appeal had been completely denied. Orlando's conviction and sentence would stand. Life after justice. Orlando Tercero will likely spend the next 30 years in Nicaragua's main penitentiary, known for its overcrowding. Every day, he is fed a small meal of rice and beans. If he wants more, his mother must deliver food to the prison gates. David Cornwell says if for any reason Orlando is ever freed and even tries to step foot on American soil, Broome County will arrest him and put him on trial. There's no double jeopardy, so if for some reason he was released, the entire case can be tried here on behalf of the family. Back in Nicaragua, some of Orlando's friends from his hometown still struggle to reconcile the person they knew with the crime he committed. He was kind. He always was kind, says one friend. He's someone that if you're ever feeling down, he finds a way to get the biggest smile out of you. He was so caring, so respectful. They simply can't believe the Orlando they know could have killed Haley. But others see the truth more clearly. As one investigator puts it, he's a killer, and if he didn't kill Haley that day, he probably would have killed somebody else someday. And if he's ever released, he'll kill again. A legacy of love. As Haley's family and friends continue to heal from their loss, they are determined to keep her memory alive in the most meaningful ways possible. What would you say to Haley's parents if you could? A friend is asked. Even though Haley's time was short, she had touched so many people's lives that I've known and that they should be really, really proud of who Haley was as a person. Another friend shares a memory that captures Haley's essential nature. One time we were all sitting in her bed and she asked us, "What does depression feel like?" And the idea that someone is just that happy, innocent, pure content. Brandon Ocampo wants people to remember her goodness. I want people to know that she was kind, that she was generous, that she was hardworking. But most of all, that she loved almost everyone that she came in contact with. Karen Anderson's final words about her daughter capture both the tragedy and the lesson of this true crime story. How do you want Haley to be remembered? As the millennial hippie that was just quirky and happy? And, as sad as it is that she trusted everybody, that's a good quality. You should trust people. But Karen has also become an advocate, using her daughter's death to push for change. I want her death to have some purpose in life, Karen explains. I would like femicide to be brought to the attention in the United States, seeing as though it's probably on the rise and it is a very serious crime. She also has a message for anyone who sees warning signs in relationships. To all of the people who see red flags, make sure you follow through and take them very seriously to help prevent these things from happening. Lessons written in tragedy. The murder of Haley Anderson is more than just another entry in the annals of true crime. It's a story about the dangers of possessive love, about the thin line between affection and obsession, and about how someone's inability to accept rejection can turn deadly. It's about how warning signs, tires, uninvited visits, emotional manipulation, threats of self-harm can escalate into violence if not taken seriously. It's about how trust, that beautiful human quality that Haley embodied so completely, can be exploited by those with darker intentions. But it's also a story about justice, about how two countries, despite political differences and legal complexities, came together to prosecute a killer who thought he could escape consequences by fleeing across borders. About how a charge that doesn't even exist in U.S. law, femicide, was used to recognize that Haley's murder was fundamentally about gender-based violence, about a man who killed a woman because he couldn't control her. Haley Anderson's story has become part of a larger conversation about violence against women, about the importance of recognizing possessive behavior before it turns deadly, and about the need for legal frameworks that acknowledge the specific nature of gender-based crimes. In Haley's old bedroom, now a sanctuary for her ashes, Karen Anderson keeps her daughter's memory alive. She does interviews like this one, not for attention, but to give Haley's death meaning. I want her death to have some purpose, Karen says again. And in that purpose, in that transformation of tragedy into advocacy, Haley's spirit of helping others lives on. The millennial hippie who trusted everyone, who wanted to travel in a van and help people as a freelance nurse, who made everyone laugh and never knew what depression felt like, she deserves so much more than 22 years. But in those years, she touched countless lives, and in her death, she has sparked conversations that might save others. That is Haley Anderson's legacy, not the violence that ended her life, but the love and trust that defined it, and the pursuit of justice that honored it. Asterisk. If you or someone you know is experiencing possessive or controlling behavior in a relationship, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Warning signs matter. Red flags matter. Your safety matters. Asterisk. Subscribe to our channel for more 48 hours true crime stories that seek justice for victims and awareness for prevention. Share this story to help spread Haley's message about recognizing red flags before it's too late. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on cases where justice prevails, even across international borders. Asterisk. Remember Haley Anderson. Remember that trust is beautiful, but safety is essential. And remember that no one has the right to control another person's life or to take it when they can't. Asterisk. Justice for Haley. Always asterisk.